Kathleen, good afternoon. I now call this public hearing to order. Today is April 8th, 2026, and we are here at the Dededo Senior Citizen Center. The time is now 5:01 p.m. This is a public hearing of the Dededo Municipal Planning Council. In compliance with the open government law, notice of this public hearing was published in the Guam Daily Post on April 1st, 2026 and April 6th, 2026, and was also posted on the Guam portal. This hearing is being recorded and streamed live on the Dededo Mayor's Office YouTube page. At this time, I'd like to recognize those in attendance. Myself, Mayor Peter J. Benedetti, Vice Mayor Ann Leon Boleros and Augustine, our staff, Maria Santos, Leilani Ferrer, Annette Azama, Erica Benedetti. Now we'll work the agenda. And also our guests and staff that are here this afternoon. On today's agenda, this is regarding GLC zone change application 2025-48 on lot 10111-2-R1, Dededo from C to L1. Applicant is Ms. Kathleen Sorensen, represented by Mr. Swavely. This afternoon, we have Mr. Swavely together with Kyle Moore. They will be representing Ms. Kathleen Sorensen. Mr. Swavely, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor. Mayor and Vice Mayor and members of the staff, thank you for your accommodations this evening. Thank you, Cushings, for attending this first of two public hearings.
Yes.
My name is Dededo Swavely. I'm representing Kathleen Sorensen, better known as Design Company. And I'm joined by my associate, Mr. Kyle Moore. So let's begin, and just raise your hand at any time if you have a question or something. You don't need to wait until I finish. Let's just kind of going along. So why are we here? Well, quickly, all properties on Guam, all private properties on Guam are zoned, meaning in a zone there are certain permitted uses and there are certain conditional uses, which you still have to go to GLUC for a conditional use permit, and the rest of the uses, zone by zone, are strictly prohibited. Okay? The subject property for tonight's hearing is zone commercial, meaning it is approved for such uses as stores, restaurants, offices, things of that commercial nature. And I'm going to get into what we're looking for, but first let's take a look at the vicinity map so we all understand where the property is located. All right, let me orient you quickly. Here's Marine Corps Drive. Here's Woodstick Road. About a half a mile west of that intersection is the property right here. Shown in the red perimeter. Empty lots on both sides. Next, Marine Corps Drive. Across the street is the very large Andy South tract. That's our subject property for tonight. Before going into more of the description of the zone change, we have a drone video to show again some aerial uses of it. Right here is the property. That is Marine Corps Drive. Yeah. Obviously something was built there before. I've got various stories about what it was, but it was before the current owner, before the applicant for tonight's hearing. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Val. So, the property is zoned commercial, but for the last 30 years or so, there has been no substantial development on it. So it's not really working very well as a commercial property by that virtue. So we can conclude that commercial doesn't work. What does work there? In an understanding of good development, good for Guam, good for Dededo, what could work there? Well, In my mind, I'm doing a lot of this work. In the last few years, the most popular land use is either housing or warehousing for construction warehousing, construction company offices and warehousing, okay? Those are the two land uses that are very popular right now. Knowing that, those two uses, housing and construction and warehousing, the best zone for this property is M1, light industrial. Why? Because light industrial allows both of those uses. You can put a construction company there with its warehousing. You can also put residential housing there. And I'm talking about either single family and or multi-family. So the M1 is, in our estimation, the very best land use for this particular property. To begin with, we chose a master plan around construction warehousing. Why is that? Well, as we know, the federal government is spending $1 billion a year right now on construction inside the fence, meaning that lots of contractors are looking for properties in which they can set up their construction operations. We used to put all of our light industrial activities down in Harmon Industrial Park. You all recall that, right? That used to be the place. Well, it's too small. Almost every lot there is already used. So since then, more light industrial, uses have started along Route 3, and a little bit into Route 9, and a couple other scattered places in Gigo and Dededo. I personally think it's a good idea to distribute construction company activities because there is a certain amount of traffic that's generated by that, and we don't want the traffic to all be congested at the same place in Guam. Most of the traffic from construction companies right now is going to either Camp Lodge or Anderson anyway, right? But it doesn't have to start at the same place. So
Anywhere, Pete?
thinking that distributing these types of activities is a good idea for Guam. I also think it's a good idea for this reason. We have lots of interest in construction warehousing because of the military buildup. This will not last forever. The time will come in a few years, very likely in the future, that these contractors are no longer needed. Then no longer needed, so they're going to pick up, pull out. That's the time we develop this property as housing. Because, as I mentioned earlier, both those uses are permitted in this zone. So that's what makes this discussion so. Regarding just contractors themselves, I noted that in 2025, the Guam Contractors Licensing Board licensed about 980 construction firms. So if only 10% of those firms are looking for a new site to develop their offices and warehouses, that's still 100 firms. So it's still a viable land use for this property for a few years before housing becomes more viable. Let's take a look at the master plan. Let me orient, please. This is Marine Corps Drive, and this is the property. Going back, this is vacant, behind low density residential. A typical construction company warehousing depot for their operations would look sort of like this. Here's a two-story building for offices where they have their supervisors and engineers, etc. Behind there, we have a single-story cafeteria for the workers. We have a retention basin here for the stormwater. Back here we have warehousing, parking, trucks that will be bringing in supplies and unloading them. Here is what we call like a laid-out yard where contractors would maybe do some precast concrete work or bring in equipment or other materials that have to be pre-assembled at this site before they're transported to the construction site. That's a pretty typical layout for a construction company warehouse property. Next. Here's a perspective of it. Again, Marine Corps Drive, offices, cafeteria in a sick bay would be in a building like that. Warehouse, parking, blah, 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 you know, yeah. Here's a view from the back. These would be temporary shipping containers before they're unloaded. These represent the trucks coming in and unloaded. Yeah, one more perspective there.
Elevation.
And an elevation, yeah. Nothing tall. The height limit in a M1 zone is 30 feet. Typically operations like this only go 2 stories because 3 stories make it a little more difficult for people to get up and down without an elevator. So 2 stories there, 1 story there, and then the warehouse. Okay. Thank you. That is, in a nutshell, my presentation. I'm delighted to have questions from you and discussions, either one work for you. For your information, the next step is at 5:30, law requires a second public hearing like this again. I hope you can stay for that. You're not going to hear anything new, but the requirement is that I make a full presentation for the law. Kimmy?
Would there be a third one after that?
Well, here's what happens. Then after that, 6:30.
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock, the Municipal Planning Council regular meeting, which is like a public hearing because there's a portion of the regular meeting where this application is on the agenda, and invariably, someone from the Municipal Planning Council might not be here for these public hearings, and then they ask a question, which requires you to go through it again. So, sometimes, yes. But getting to another part of your question, if you are expecting someone for the 6 o'clock meeting who might not be here, I'm happy to make this personal presentation to you or anyone else at any time. Okay? Public hearings are totally critical to a good community planning process, and I believe in it and I practice it all the time. So if you don't get enough time here for you or yours, you just let me know and I'll set up something for you to accomplish.
Jim,
Yes.
at the beginning where the frontage is at,
Yes?
so,
Like the city map? Here?
okay, let's go back, go forward, please,
To one of
to right
the
there.
master plans? Yeah, right here.
Okay, now I noticed the buffer zone,
Yes.
is that gonna be fenced?
Uh,
I don't understand, I didn't think the zone should be fenced in, yeah?
Are we talking about this part?
The dark area. Okay, the
Yeah,
triangle kind of shape there,
Yeah.
is the, where the water line
Yeah,
goes?
yeah.
Okay, now in front of that, isn't that the buffer zone?
There is a property buffer zone along Marine Corps Drive.
Yes.
If you live in the area or have property there, you'll know. It extends north and south. So we can't go in there.
Is it fenced in?
I cannot fence it in. My fence, I'm expecting my fence to start here.
Okay,
Yeah. There.
okay, I was just wondering that because right now as we're speaking here, it's actually fenced in, the buffer zone.
Yeah, I noticed that too, because when I parked there, it was fenced in.
Yeah,
Now, they may have gotten, it's called a highway encroachment permit. The previous owner may have received a highway encroachment permit, which does exactly what it says. It allows you to encroach in a highway right of way or an easement. I doubt that it would be there if it wasn't permitted, because it's an easy view of everyone, right? But it's nothing we're going to do. And beyond that, Our percolation basin here, or we sometimes call it the ponding basin, our percolation basin here must be fenced in. That is a DPW building permit requirement. And of course, we would put fencing around the rest of it, just for security and safety. That fencing would be the typical 6-foot tall cyclone fence. 6 foot tall is permissible.
Are you familiar with the property next to that property that borders it?
North or south? Well, it doesn't matter.
South,
The answer is
south,
yes.
The south one?
Oh, this one?
Yes,
No, I'm not.
There are 10 lots there?
No, I'm not. Is that the property you're representing? Yeah. Good.
So,
Good deal.
actually, I believe all of the families are opposing this project. Did you know that there is a PUD zone?
What is it?
That property?
Your property?
Yes, the whole lot there.
The PUD zone?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I did see that because one of our requirements is we have to do all the zones within 1,000 feet. Okay, within 1,000 feet. I don't know when it became PUD.
goes back in 1972.
Yeah, so PUD, actually, technically it's called PGD by law, Planned Development District, but in California they call it PUD, so we just pick up that terminology, PUD. It's the same thing. PUD started about 1972 or 73. It became law, and it was very popular for a while to have people zone their property PUD. Most of them never worked out, because there are serious development restrictions of the PUD. 70% of the land cannot be developed, for instance.
Are you saying PDD or PUD?
It's the same thing.
Okay.
The law is PDD,
Okay.
Planned Development District, but we call it PUD. It's just, so I'm not surprised if it was zoned whichever one, PDD, PUD, in the 70s, and nothing's happened, because many properties suffered that same thing. Many properties who got on that bandwagon to rezone the PDD has since changed, because it's just a very difficult zone. It's not difficult, but let me give you an example. Let me give you an example of a planned development district. Rio Palace Resort. Okay? 1,000 acres. Hotels, condos, apartments, restaurants, single family, duplexes. That's what a PDD is about. Golf courses. That's what a PDD is about. Multiple activities that normally each would take its own zone. You put it all in one property at PDD. But a planned development district requires that you dedicate 70% of the area undeveloped. 70%. And that is a killer for most development plans. Okay?
So if they didn't do that 70%, they would be able to put residential houses there, so I agree they could put 10 houses there.
10 houses.
Yes,
Yes.
or 10 double or duplexes.
Okay.
And
With the PDD.
yes,
Okay.
but then you wouldn't have to provide that 70%.
So Jenny, in an R2 zone, for instance, you can get about 32 houses per acre.
Say it again, sir.
About 30, sorry, you can get about 32 houses per acre in an R2 zone. And you don't have to fool around with any 70% here and there. And that's why I'm saying, most landowners who started with PDD changed to something else. Changed to something which is more appropriate right now. From a land use planning perspective, it doesn't make sense to me to have, you have what, about 4 acres there? 4 or 5 acres?
10 lots that are little bigger than a house lot.
Okay, so it looks, okay, here's what I'm saying. if this is almost 3 acres, this looks to me like about 5 acres, just eyeballing, right? Okay, if you can get 10 house lots on there as a PDD zone, I'm telling you, you could get 32 times 10. How many acres did you say?
We're looking at about probably 5 acres.
Okay, 5 times 150 units.
So they take 150 houses? I'm sorry, how many houses for that?
32 and multifamily. Your permitted density without a variance, you can get 32 units per acre. And this is why people who jumped on the PDD bandwagon in the 70s, many have changed, because it just doesn't. Why should you give up 70% of that 5 acres for what? So that you can put something that doesn't, something that is unusual, I don't know. A zoo, put a zoo there maybe, or something like that, you know, but the only time in my mind, and I've done a bunch of these, when a CBD zone makes sense is when you have 50 acres or more. That's when a CBD makes sense. Right next to the Leo Palace Resort, as you go down Leo Palace Drive, you know, you come in Darrow Road from Channel Harbor, you take the left, yeah, you go down Leo Palace Drive, you go down to the Longford River, you go over the bumpy bridge there, you start coming up. From that point, on both sides, all the way to the guard station at Leo Palace Drive is a PDD. 1,100 acres. That's what works.
This is for the development of the maybe housing is going to take place.
Well, possibly. That area was first owned by Texas A&M. It was a white look, gifted property to Texas A&M in exchange for the university naming its school of engineering after him. Yeah. And then since then, Texas A&M came back about 15 years ago and did all the studies and we rezoned it from agriculture to planned development district. Here's an example of why a PDD works. 5,000 residential units, condominiums, school area, lots of parks, and municipal amenities, you know. We have a place for senior citizens. That's what goes into it. Normally, it is very, today, I don't think I could get 5 acres rezoned as a PDD. I just don't think I could do it, because I don't think I could come up with justification. In the 70s, it was new. Everybody liked it. They did.
This property has been divided into 10 properties, and they're averaging about 1,621 square meters per lot.
Okay.
So,
Correct.
yeah, so, under that, zone, how many houses can you build on that one property?
Under which zone?
Under what you mentioned,
The R2 zone?
Yeah.
Multi-family zone?
the
PDD?
yes,
Well, I'm not sure, Jimmy, because I have to lay out a master plan. I have to, first of all, I have to figure out where 70% of the property is. 70% of 5 acres, all right? Much more than half undeveloped.
so this still requires 70%,
If it's a
empty
PDD,
land,
if it's a PDD.
green space, right?
Yeah, they call it undeveloped property, but
No tennis court or anything like that?
okay, so maybe recreation facilities. What is undeveloped and what is not undeveloped has evolved over the last, since the 70s, right, over the last 50 years. And right now, I know I did a couple of PDDs where we got part of the 70% as maybe a tennis court, maybe a swimming pool, things like that. Not in the beginning you couldn't, but now you can. So there's some kind of, but you don't put a tennis court or a swimming pool for 10 houses. It's just dumb, right? It's too expensive, too uneconomical.
Okay, anyway, this property could have 10 houses or 10 lots.
Today,
Yes.
I don't know that.
We don't have to do anything, any zoning.
I don't know that. I don't know that. I have show a master plan, just like we have here. Okay, so I don't know what the zone would look like for that application.
So,
They could probably get it from land management, they probably have it.
so
That's what you
I guess
could
the
do.
point what I'm saying is that if this was back to agricultural property, we could give 10 houses, one on each of those lots.
If it was back to agriculture property, well, you could, but you're next to a soil. Why are you wasting a quarter acre when you have a soil line running?
Well, that's exactly what I'm saying, we wanna take advantage of those things.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that, we're gonna have a lot of, people staying here, and that is why, we're opposing the, development. Because they're having all these, things that shouldn't be there, should be over in Harmon.
No, they can't be our apartment school. Apartment school.
Well, we have to find another location, because
Apartment school.
the best use of that property that you mentioned from the beginning was for housing. So now, this is not the best use.
So what I said, Jimmy, was that right now, commercial doesn't work, because it's been commercial for 30 years, right? And it's got a lot of vacant properties on the same side of the road, between Dededo off the Jigo and back. And about the only ones that have been developed are some big ones like Ace Auto Court, or Prestige Auto, or American Grocery, right? That's about all that's gone in along that whole stretch. So what I said was, what should go there? And my point is that today in Guam, the things that we try to develop are housing, or for the next few years, a construction yard, a depot, construction depot. Because that's what's selling right now. That's what we need right now. And the reason why it should go to M1, light industrial, is because that zone allows both. So we're proposing to make it into a small scale construction company, like I showed, for the next few years while the construction at Anderson and Camp Bloss is going on, and then after that, those are all relocatable, they're metal buildings, you know, you take them down, you move them somewhere else, that's the time for housing. That's what we're saying. Now, if I own the property that you own, I'll tell you, I would get rid of this, personally, I would get rid of this PDD, because that's restricted for what you want to do. I would get rid of the PDD thing, I would rezone it R2, and then get a good master plan there. My experience with the 32 units per acre works for just an acre or two. But once you get into 5 or 6 acres, you have so many units there, which creates what? Lots of traffic, lots of public amenities. You have to have bigger infrastructure, bigger ponding basins. So I'm not saying you should max it out. I'm saying you can max it out.
That's a good advice, to give the most use of the property, but if you did take that advice, we would still not want that industrial, like, a light industrial next to us, because of the problems that it would bring to our neighborhood. It's downwind,
Yes.
and all the things that go along with,
What are the other
industrial.
What are the other things?
Pollution, smell of the fumes, the diesel from the trucks, the smell.
Yeah, okay. I mean, that's possible. If you are.
I understand that there's gonna be a repair shop. I already hear,
Yes.
and they're changing tires, when they're popping up the tires, even a car tire.
Yeah.
And we have some of the members of the family that are, Vietnam vets that
Right,
don't wanna hear these,
right,
big booms.
right, right.
So,
Well,
we're hoping for.
I understand that. I think that's a legitimate concern.
So we're hoping, we want a peaceful neighborhood. So we, have other.
Well, it's gotta remain peaceful so long as nothing's developed, that's for sure. But every person has a right to at least seek the highest and best use for their property, and that's really what this application is about, the highest and best use of property. Because frankly, we've proven commercial doesn't work. And I can't put housing in a commercial zone, that is prohibited. Okay, I can't build housing right now. That's prohibited.
But basically, what we're doing now is putting an industrial housing area. We have houses in the back, we have our bases on the side. Then you have, further on the back side of, the Dededo Center.
Yes, there is a low-density housing back here, right, behind the city. Yeah, there's low-density housing here, right? Right?
I believe
We
you had,
don't know what's going to go here.
I believe you had concerns already from that side, and you also have concerns on the other side of us. From our first meeting.
I'm not familiar with the
Yeah,
concerns.
in your first meeting, two people stood up.
What is that going on the other side?
I have to confirm. Okay, if there's, do we have any more questions for Mr. Swavely? We're gonna wrap it up because we have to do the second meeting, and then you can proceed on with your questions on the second meeting.
Okay.
So it is now 5:33, and I call this first meeting for application 2025-48 to an adjournment. Thank you.